What is China's Rural Poverty Alleviation Program? By Zena Deng. This was first published on the 27th of November 2020 on MangoPressNews.com. A full link to the article is in the description below, or if you click in the top left corner of the screen right now, there's a link to the article if you want to read along. In September 2019, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres highly praised China's poverty alleviation achievement. In his speech, he presented an interesting fact that China's poverty alleviation campaign has helped over 800 million people get out of poverty. A massive number, bigger than the whole European population combined. However, suspicions regarding China's achievements came along quickly. For one, many commentators questioned China's poverty line, suspecting that the Chinese government has changed the poverty line in order to make the number look bigger. In an attempt to help mitigate these types of concerns and bring more awareness of China's achievements to the masses, our Mango Press researchers have dug into China's poverty alleviation program in more intricate detail. China's long and difficult anti-poverty course. Since the middle of the 1950s, China has adopted a dual economic structure that separates rural and urban economies. The poverty problem of rural residents has been the main objective of the National Poverty Alleviation Policy, which is the focus of this report. Eliminating poverty has always been one of the major topics for the Chinese government, but only since 1978, when China decided to enforce economic reform, the mission was put forward and expanded to a nationwide level. Generally, the process can be divided into 5 main phases: 1978 to 1985, 1986 to 1993, 1994 to 2000, 2001 to 2010, and 2011 to 2020. In 1978, China pushed forward land reform, in which the People's Commune system was replaced by the family contract system. The reform had boosted land output dramatically as a result of improved working efficiency. According to official data, grain output per capita increased by 14% from 1978 to 1985, and on average, over 17.8 million people were lifted out of poverty each year during this phase as a result of this. Starting from 1986, various anti-poverty institutions were set up, special funds were put in place, and for the first time, the government introduced a poverty standard by calculating Engels' coefficiency level.
The turning point occurred in 1994 when the government held the National Poverty Alleviation Work Conference. They made the promise that in 7 years, 80 million people would be lifted out of poverty. The plan was extremely comprehensive and included various aspects that could help poor people sustain the promised better living standards, besides income or food. The main policies can be summarized into the following: support for poor households with basic conditions for stable food and clothing. Each household could contract 0.16 acres of the orchard or 0.16 acres of cropland on average, and at least one person in each household was offered job opportunities in the town, enterprises or developed areas. Infrastructure construction will be strengthened. This includes ensuring residents and livestock will have clean water. Roads will be built in the vast majority of poverty-stricken villages, towns and local markets, and the vast majority of poverty-stricken villages will have access to electricity. Improve the education and health level in impoverished areas. Popularizing primary education and actively eliminating illiteracy among young and middle-aged people. Carrying out adult vocational and technical education and training so that most young and middle-aged workers can master 1 or 2 practical skills, which is improving their medical and health conditions. The results were stunning. During the 15 years from 1986 to 2000, 16.3 million acres of basic farmland was built in the poor, rural areas of China. which helped provide clean drinking water for more than 77.25 million people and 84 million large livestock. By the end of 2000, 95.5%, 89%, 69%, and 67.7% of administrative villages in poverty-stricken areas had access to electricity, roads, postal services, and telephones, respectively.
However, the government effort did not stop there. In 2001, as the overall Chinese economy improved, the government decided to increase the poverty line by 40%. Although the revised number of people under the poverty line was almost 5 times higher, it is an important step to guarantee a meaningful outcome that reflects the material conditions of Chinese society. The same applies to the revision of the poverty line in 2011, where the number rose by 450%. In the newest outline of poverty alleviation and development in rural China, published in 2011, the government added even more comprehensive criteria. According to the outline, by 2020, those who are currently under the poverty line will not worry about food and clothing, and compulsory education, basic medical care and housing will be guaranteed. The growth rate of the per capita net income for farmers in poverty-stricken areas will be higher than the national average level, and the main indicators of basic public services will be close to the national average level, thus reversing the trend of widening the development gap. More detailed provisions include, by 2015, basic farmland and water conservation facilities in poverty-stricken areas will be greatly improved, and every farmer will be guaranteed a patch of field on which the farmer's grain is grown. By 2020, the level of farmland infrastructure construction will be significantly improved. By 2015, the problem of rural drinking water safety in poor areas will be solved, and by 2020, the quality of rural drinking water and the popularisation of tap water will be further improved. By 2020, all rural areas will have access to electricity. By 2020, roads will be accessible to all villages, so as to realise the bus service for all villages. By 2020, each town shall have a state-run health centre, and each administrative village will have a health room. The participation rate of the new rural cooperative medical system shall be at more than 90%, and the overall coverage of outpatient service will be realised. There will be one general practitioner in each town health centre. By 2020, fully realise the access of radio and television to all households. All natural villages will have access to broadband. All key counties will have libraries and cultural centres. By 2020, realise the full coverage of the new rural social endowment insurance system. By 2020, the forest coverage rate will increase by 3.5% compared with the end of 2010.
So what does it mean in terms of getting rid of poverty? It is clear that the goal of China's poverty alleviation effort is never solely about improving people's income, but their overall living standards. With the 2011 Poverty Alleviation Outline, the Chinese government gives the answer to this question with the 8 haves. The 8 haves of poor households are: first, they have safe housing; second, they have safe drinking water; they have basic farmland; income-increasing industries; at least one person in the household has a professional skill qualification certificate; they have basic social security; they have surplus grain at home; they have surplus money on hand. When listed poor people can live at least with the mentioned materials or resources, their names will be removed from the national database. Almost 10 years have passed since then. So what has the government achieved? According to China Economic Weekly, by the end of 2019, 97% of the poverty-stricken people who have established files have been lifted out of poverty. 94% of the poverty-stricken counties have been removed from the database, and overall regional poverty has been eradicated entirely. On the 16th of August of 2020, XinhuaNet shared a map visualizing the whole anti-poverty program progress. Here, we took a Tibetan County, Kona County as an example. Kona County is located in the south of the Tibet Autonomous Region and southeast of the Himalaya Mountains. The total land area of Kona County is 34,900 square kilometers. It has jurisdiction over 9 townships and 1 town, 25 villages and 55 villages groups. By the end of 2019, the total population of Kona County was 15,400, including 13,200 people engaged in agricultural and animal husbandry. By the end of 2019, 24 villages, 1,200 households, or 3,100 people have been lifted out of poverty, and the poverty incidence rate has dropped from 23.4% to 0%. Roads, electricity, and other fundamental infrastructures have been built to satisfy residents' needs. Countless cases like Kona County are happening in mainland China, and it truly becomes a sustainable project which will benefit poor regions in the long term.
Solve the puzzle. Getting back to the controversy concerning the poverty line, in 1986, China formulated the National Poverty Alleviation Standard for the first time, classifying farmers with an annual net income of less than 260 RMB as extremely poor. The line was lifted to 865 RMB in 2001 and to 2,300 RMB in 2011. Nevertheless, the number is not static as it floats in relation to inflation or the Consumer Price Index. According to the Poverty Alleviation and Development Office of the State Council of China, by 2015 the current price of this standard is 2,855 RMB. Applying the PPP method, it is equivalent to the US dollar of 2.2 per day, slightly higher than the International Extreme Poverty Standard of US dollar 1.9. The standard of 2,855 RMB is the current minimum poverty alleviation standard in China. According to the regulations, provinces can also set local poverty alleviation standards higher than this standard. At present, 12 provinces and cities formulated local standards higher than the national standards, which are generally around 4,000 RMB, and the highest ones are more than 6,000 RMB. Furthermore, by analysing the data of the registered poor population in March 2020, we can see that the per capita income of the people who have been lifted out of poverty is more than 9,000 RMB, and the per capita income of the remaining poor people is more than 6,000 RMB, which is way higher than that of the global poverty line published by the UN. Many people cannot fathom how complicated China's poverty alleviation system is, and we should know that there is not a universal standard for all areas, not even inside China, where different provinces administer different poverty line standards. Even experts in the UN admitted that the current global poverty line is extremely subjective. Charles Kennedy argued in his report of Goal 1, End Poverty in All Its Forms Everywhere, poverty lines at the national and local level are frequently revised and upward, and there are good reasons for this. This approach, however, risks the possibility that steady development progress will not yield poverty reduction, simply because the poverty line keeps moving too.
In conclusion, China's poverty alleviation program has drawn a lot of attention from the West, but unfortunately, most Westerners cast doubts on the motives of this initiative and link it to outright propaganda from the Communist Party of China. Certain Western journalists went to these impoverished areas to get first-hand information, and all the contents presented in their reports revolved around some posters hung on the wall, coupled with unpleasant whispers. This type of ignorant research will only hinder interested parties from understanding and possibly learning from the mechanism behind this initiative, especially for those poverty-stricken countries who are also struggling with extreme poverty issues. At last, let's remember our slogan, no investigation, no right to speak. And let us also learn from the socialist method in eliminating extreme poverty, and improving people's material conditions, as evidenced by China.